Tired of shows that bark and scream at you? This is the show that speaks to you.
Here's the game plan.
It's the Big E Sports Extravaganza, where we go inside the issues, present a variety of topics, and feature some of the biggest sports guests on the planet. Now, here's the one and only, award-winning Elissa Walker-Campbell.
Hey, welcome back to the Big E Sports Show. I'm your host, Elissa Walker-Campbell. Always great to have you with us as we talk a little golf. The Korn Ferry Tour season just wrapped up, and there has been no shortage of storylines. My next guest today knows all about perseverance and precision under pressure. Former PGA Tour player, author, one of the finest instructors in the game, and that is the great Larry Miller. Always a joy to have you with us. Hi, Larry.
Hi, how you doing out there? Heating up. All the Q schools are going on, and people are jockeying for position and, trying to ensure that they have a job for the next couple of years, and in some cases 1 year. Tell you what, it's dog eat dog out there, and it's individual sport.
Yeah, they're pursuing status. But let's take a look back to last week, the Korn Ferry Tour Championship. What were some of your biggest takeaways from this year's event and the players who ultimately earned their PGA Tour cards?
Well, my takeaways are that these guys can really play. And I think I told you last show we did about the Ryder Cup. I'm not so sure we couldn't put out 10 or 12 guys off the Korn Ferry top of the list that wouldn't do just as well. I mean, these guys, the numbers that they're shooting on long, tough golf courses, you see in 25 and 27 and 29 under par. It's just amazing. And so it's no wonder as soon as they set foot on the PGA Tour, they're ready to win. We're seeing it more and more every single year. So these guys can really play. And Johnny Kiefer, I think he won twice, right, on the regular season, and then he won Q School. So he's ensured his way. He was a great player at Baylor, and he's been developing. And it goes to show you how you can continue to develop in some guys, some people, some players who you don't think are going to quite make it all of a sudden blossom, and then they're playing great. So anyway, it's going to be a really interesting year to see these guys hit the tour.
Larry, you mentioned Baylor's Johnny Kiefer. What impressed you the most about his journey, his perseverance that it took to finally reach the biggest stage?
It's one of the most important ingredients that you can have. Talent is just one part of it. It really is. It's just one little segment. You've got to have talent. You've got to have a support system. You have to have perseverance is a big, huge part of it, as he's proven. And then you got to have a little luck. You got to stay healthy. You can't hurt your shoulder or your wrist or your elbow or your hip. I mean, there's so many ingredients that end up, making up a successful player on one of the tours. And so talent is just one aspect, but perseverance, that is a real big one, because I'm telling you, in golf, you have many opportunities to give up and throw in the towel when things are going sour. And the ones that persevere and the ones that have the talent and get a little luck and stay healthy, those are the ones that you see at the top.
Larry, when you see a player like a Johnny Kiefer break through, I mean, what does that tell you about, and you kind of alluded to this about the Ryder Cup, what does it tell you about the next generation of just this young, bright talent that is coming up through the ranks? They just continue to deliver.
Every year, we're seeing more and more winners and first-time winners on the PGA Tour. This has been going on. When we started doing this show together, you had one or two, that would do that. Now, I mean, every year it's more and more. It's a changing of the guard is what we're witnessing. Some of the quote-unquote, name players that we've been accustomed to seeing win tournaments. Some have gone to the Live Tour, like Campbell and Dustin Johnson, and John Rahm, Joaquin Neiman, and yet others that name players that are still on the PGA Tour, they're not doing it anymore. Look at Jordan Spieth. Look at Patrick Cantlay. Look at Xander Schauffele. And they're not winning, and they're not performing like they were 3-4 years ago. And so I think we're witnessing a really extreme changing of the guard in golf. And this year, I can promise you, in 26, we're going to see so many names winning tournaments that you've never heard of. And that's where they're coming from. They're coming from the Korn Ferry Tour and from some of the other minor tours.
If you're just joining us, former PGA Tour player, author, and instructor Larry Miller is with us on the Big E Sports Show. We were just highlighting the Korn Ferry Tour Championship, and let's talk about Q School. What an emotional roller coaster. You've lived it. I mean, how would you describe it? And just the mindset that a player must have to survive and advance through each stage.
And Q School will make the most calm person a nervous wreck. The only way I can describe Q School is that it's like every shot that you stand over, you're thinking, if I miss this shot, I'm out of here. And I mean, that's the kind of pressure it is. And it's true. I mean, so many times you see a player miss by 1 or 2 shots. And it's because of some mistake in the round that they shouldn't have made, and typically at the end, because the pressure gets ratcheted up when you get near the end of the round. So I'm telling you, it's gut-wrenching, and it's nerve-wracking. I've been through a bunch of them, and I don't care how many you've been to, every time, and they put that pencil and scorecard in your hand, and they tell you, okay, you got 120 players, and you got 6 spots to play for. No, there's no margin for error. And 30 years ago, you could shoot a 75 or 76 and still have a couple of good rounds that make it through qualifying or make the cut in the tournament. Not now. You can't have a bad round now. You have to play good all the time to be successful. There's just that many good players. And Q School is the ultimate example of that, because you just, you can hardly miss a shot. And because there's so few places available now.
From your experience, though, what separates those from who move on to those who fall short?
It's 2 things. They make more putts, and they are better at course management. And that includes being better at course management includes being better at self-management, managing your emotions and your thoughts. And when you can do that, then you make better decisions on the course with course management. So the top players are just better at strategically navigating their way around a golf course, and they make fewer bogeys. And then the other aspect of it is the putting. The top players are just great putters. They just make more putts, and they work at it. You watch, the public doesn't see the way these guys work on Monday through Wednesday. They don't see all the hours they spend on the practice green, time after time, hitting 53 footers in a row. They don't watch that. But that's what these top players do. People think they're just good. Well, they're just good because they work at it hard. And so it's 2 things. They're better. They're a little bit better putters, and they're great at self-management and course management.
So you mentioned course management and putting, which is the separator, but what about emotional stability? How do you help players develop that?
Well, you know what? Unfortunately, some people are born with a natural emotional makeup that can't handle pressure, and it prevents a lot of very talented players from making it. I've witnessed it so many times. Just great ball strikers, great swings, great putters, but when the pressure was on, they just couldn't do it. So emotional makeup is kind of a God-given thing. But however, having said that, the more times you're exposed to the pressure repeatedly, eventually you start getting a little bit more comfortable with it. Yeah. And it's a matter of being exposed to it a number of times. That's why you'll often see a player getting contention a lot for a couple of years and not win. And all of a sudden, like Cameron Young, and then all of a sudden, he's been exposed to it so many times, he gets a little bit more comfortable, and all of a sudden, he's successful. And so it's a matter of and listen, that goes along with perseverance, because to get exposed that many times to it, you have to persevere enough to be exposed to it that much. And so it all goes hand in hand. But perseverance, I think we let off this interview with perseverance and that big. And so anyone out there who is aspiring to play and feels like they want to give up, don't do it. Not if you have the talent. If you got the talent, then all you have to do is persevere.
Well, and I was going to say, how do you maintain that belief when things get really tough, when that momentum shifts, or, as we're talking about, the putts don't fall, the putts don't drop?
Yeah, well, the self-belief is something that, you have to, tell you something, all the great players, all through their careers, from the time they were junior golfers, they always thought they were better than they really were, almost to the point of being arrogant. And cocky. But I'm telling you, all the great players, they think they're really good. They believe in themselves. Now, how do you do that? Sometimes you have to just make it up in your mind. You have to fool yourself, and you have to keep going. But on the practice tee, if you're hitting shots, great shots, shot after shot when you're practicing, then you know that you can hit the shots. So why wouldn't you believe in yourself? So then it's a matter of being able to do it in competition on the golf course. And that's when the managing your emotions and the course, that's when that comes into play. But you got to maintain the self-belief as long as you have talent. You know whether you have talent or not, because if you go out there and you're in a practice session and you hit 20% shots that aren't really good, then you got to question your ability, because Trevino said one time, if you can't play your home course every day in 65 or 6, don't even try. So you have to be that good.
Former PGA pro Larry Miller with us. And you mentioned Q School. Of course, my son and one of your students, Stephen Campbell Jr., we will be up in Fort Worth next week at Sugar Tree for the first stage of Q School. And you have been so instrumental in Stephen's journey, not only just refining his technique, but helping him shape his mindset and just that competitive confidence. So let's talk about Stephen. I mean, what stands out to you about his growth and really his perseverance? Because the past 12 months have not been easy for him, but he is finally back on track.
Well, Stephen has the talent, number one. He's got the support system, number two. He's got the mind for it, the brains for it, which has to do with managing the golf course strategically. I think Stephen has to concentrate on putting, just on putting, because when you're putting well, it makes you hit better shots. But if you know that you're not putting well, then it's almost like, why should I hit a good shot if I can't make the putt? I mean, it's not that extreme, but it's kind of like that. And so if I was, I'm going to tell Stephen that I think he needs to spend an extra hour on that putting green, because, you got to do drills that give you confidence. Stand there and make 53 footers in a row. See that ball go in the hole. And what that does, it instills confidence in you when you get in competition. You've done it so many times that it's almost automatic. But I think Stephen has every ingredient you need to be successful. I think he will be. But I like to see him work a little bit more on his putting.
Yeah. Hey, we are winding down our time with former PGA Tour player Larry Miller, author, his latest release, Ben Hogan's Secret Fundamental, What He Never Told the World. And the countdown is on. I can't believe 2026 is just around the corner. Who are some of the players you're going to be keeping your eye on?
I'm going to really be interested to see what happens with Jordan Spieth, because, he didn't make the FedEx. And there's a guy that was on top of the world a few years ago, and it's almost become a mind thing with him. I think that's going to be an interesting story. I also want to see if Xander Schauffele and Patrick Cantlay can, perform well enough to get in the top 5 in the world again and keep it there. And of course, it's always interesting to watch Scotty Scheffler, who is like a golfing robot. I mean, he just hits the same shot time after time until he has to hit it. Interesting stuff. I think Scotty Scheffler is, he's creeping up on being in the same category as Tiger. One more 2 years like this, and it's going to be a valid comparison. Yeah. So there's a lot of good storylines. And then the other thing is some of these Korn Ferry players, how many of them are going to win on the PGA Tour? And I predict it's going to be a bunch. So a lot of interesting storylines.
Always good wisdom and perspective from former PGA Tour player, and that is Larry Miller. You and Connie enjoy this beautiful fall weather, and we look forward to talking again. Thank you, Larry.
Great. Okay.
You
Take
bet.
care.